Imagine a simple animated sitcom meant only to make people laugh, quietly sketching the outlines of tomorrow. Since 1989, The Simpsons hasn't just entertained, it's foreshadowed events with a precision that borders on prophecy. Donald Trump is president, smartwatches before Apple, video calls before Zoom, every gag now feels like a breadcrumb on a map to the future. But the most chilling of all are the hints of what's coming next. In recent episodes, society crumbles in ways that mirror today's headlines. Artificial intelligence revolts, economies wobble, governments crack down on privacy. The writers insist it's only comedy, yet the evidence stacks up like an unsolved code. How did a cartoon for families become a mirror of destiny? Did it simply absorb the anxieties of the culture, or did it tap into something deeper, some unspoken current in the collective consciousness? As we step into 2026, each rewatch of The Simpsons feels less like nostalgia and more like looking into a crystal ball. This isn't just trivia, it's a warning wrapped in yellow skin and punchlines. And when we understand how many of these jokes became reality, we're forced to ask, are we living our own script that was written decades ago? In November 1990, Bart cast a line into the river next to Springfield's nuclear plant and hauled up a grotesque, orange, three-eyed fish. Blinky became an icon for toxic comedy, a mascot for the show's running gag about pollution. People bought t-shirts and mugs, environmentalists used him as a cartoon punchline. 2 decades later, a fisherman in Argentina pulled a real three-eyed fish out of a reservoir near a nuclear facility. Photos went viral. News anchors used the same word, Blinky. More reports surfaced, mutated fish in New York State, three-eyed catfish in Brooklyn. Scientists hedged, mutations happen. Yet the timing and location, always near heavy industry or nuclear plants, were too uncanny to ignore. The Simpsons had once been an exaggeration of environmental neglect, suddenly it felt like a mirror. The image of Blinky was no longer satire but prophecy, a bright orange emblem of what happens when we treat ecosystems like garbage dumps. In a single cartoon fish, the show captured an uncomfortable truth, that pollution isn't a distant threat, it's already rewriting nature at the genetic level. In 1994, long before most people had even touched a smartphone, The Simpsons aired a quick gag in the episode Lisa on Ice. School bully Kearney scribbles a note on his shiny new Apple Newton, "Beat up Martin." The device, trying to decipher his handwriting, cheerfully changes it to "Eat up Martha." It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, a poke at clumsy technology and a company already struggling with handwriting recognition. But decades later, the joke feels less like parody and more like an origin story. By the mid-2000s, Apple's iPhone and a wave of touchscreen devices put predictive text and autocorrect into everyone's pockets. Suddenly, "Eat up Martha" was our life. Words we never typed appeared in messages. Apologies for absurd typos became routine. Memes about ducking and other misfires flooded social media. The gag had jumped off the screen and into the bloodstream of culture. Inside Apple, engineers reportedly kept "Eat up Martha" taped on their walls as a warning, get it right this time. Yet even with billions of dollars in R&D, autocorrect still mangles meaning every day. It shapes conversations, relationships, even politics, all because a line of code decided we meant something else. That's what makes The Simpsons gag so eerie. It wasn't just a lampoon of a bad device, it foreshadowed an age in which algorithms silently rewrite our words. A harmless misfire in 1994 became a microcosm of 21st century life, technology meant to assist us bending our intent, steering communication in ways we barely notice. "Eat up Martha" is no longer just a joke, it's a prophecy about how invisible systems would mediate human speech. And it happened almost word for word on a yellow cartoon long before it happened to you. In December 1990, an episode of The Simpsons called Itchy and Scratchy and Marge slipped a sharp lesson into its slapstick. In the story, Marge campaigns to ban violent cartoons. But the protest spirals into something bigger, a public outcry over what kind of art should be allowed in Springfield. When a replica of Michelangelo's David, one of the most celebrated sculptures in human history, comes to town, angry citizens demand it be covered with pants. Suddenly Marge, who started the fight, has to decide, Is this about protecting people from harm or about controlling what they can see? She reverses course, saying art must remain as it is. At the time, it played like a cheeky commentary on American culture wars. But more than 25 years later, real life echoed the cartoon. In 2016, a copy of David in St. Petersburg, Russia, sparked outrage. A petition circulated demanding the statue be covered. A public vote was held. Headlines around the world framed it as another skirmish in the endless war between expression and decency. Just as in Springfield, the statue stayed uncovered, but the fight revealed how fragile our tolerance for art still is. What felt like satire in 1990 now reads as a map of the present. In an era of online outrage, book bans, and viral petitions, cultural debates can pivot overnight from one target to another. A single work of art can become the center of a global storm. The Simpsons anticipated not just a specific incident but the deeper cycle, how censorship can expand until it reaches something we personally cherish, and only then do we question it. That's the real prophecy hidden in a cartoon subplot about a naked marble man. On Valentine's Day 2010, The Simpsons aired an episode that seemed like pure fantasy. Homer and Marge, two cartoon parents from a fictional town, joined the U.S. Olympic curling team at the Vancouver Winter Games, and won gold, beating Sweden for the top spot. At the time it was a throwaway gag. America was not a curling powerhouse, it had only one Olympic medal in the sport, a bronze in 2006. The notion of the U.S. triumphing over Sweden, curling royalty, felt like a punchline about unlikely dreams. 8 years later, reality copied the cartoon almost stone for stone. In February 2018 at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, the U.S. men's curling team, ranked far below the favorites and struggling early in the tournament, mounted a miraculous comeback. They reached the final against Sweden. They won gold. Headlines screamed just like The Simpsons. Fans posted side-by-side clips. It was too specific, too improbable. A gag meant to lampoon America's underdog fantasies had become an actual underdog triumph on the world stage. This isn't just trivia. It captures something deeper about how stories shape reality. Curling in the U.S. had quietly grown in popularity after that Simpsons episode. Local clubs reported surges of interest. The players themselves grew up in the era of Homer and Marge's animated win. Whether consciously or not, a cartoon helped plant an idea: we could do this. By 2018, the joke had manifested as a victory. The curling gold shows the eerie double power of pop culture. It can satirize, and it can inspire. In one episode, The Simpsons both mocked the unlikelihood of U.S. dominance and seeded the belief that made it possible. Years later, reality picked up the stone and slid it right into the house of history. On March 30, 2014, The Simpsons aired an episode that, on the surface, was just another absurd adventure. Homer Simpson becomes a referee at the World Cup. But tucked inside the jokes was a story darker than most viewers realized. The episode showed FIFA as a shady, bribe-soaked organization, and one of its top officials is arrested mid-tournament. It was a caricature so bold it almost felt defamatory, a cartoon accusing the world's biggest sporting body of systemic corruption. At that time, whispers about FIFA scandals had been circulating for years, but nothing public had cracked the surface. Then, just a year later, reality caught up. In May 2015, the FBI and IRS unleashed a massive investigation that rocked international football to its core. In Zurich, at dawn, police stormed a luxury hotel and arrested senior FIFA executives. Dozens were charged with bribery, racketeering, and money laundering. Headlines and courtrooms around the globe looked like still frames lifted from The Simpsons. And the parallels didn't stop there. In that same episode, Germany wins the World Cup, a small detail viewers barely noticed. A few months after the cartoon aired, Germany really did win the 2014 World Cup, cementing the episode's eerie reputation as a double prediction, champion and scandal, both foretold. The deeper story is about timing. The Simpsons writers weren't psychic, they were listening to rumors most of us ignored. But their satire gave shape to a truth the world hadn't dared to face. When the arrests finally came, it wasn't just a sports scandal, It was a signal of how global institutions can rot behind closed doors. A 30-minute animated comedy had already drawn the scene. Reality simply filled in the color. In January 2012, The Simpsons slipped in a line so quick most viewers barely noticed it. During the episode Politically Inept with Homer Simpson, a ticker crawls across the bottom of a fake news broadcast, "Europe puts Greece on eBay." It's the kind of one-second gag the show had been doing for decades, a wink at Europe's financial troubles, absurd enough to provoke a laugh, then gone. 3 years later, the punchline landed like a hammer. In June 2015, Greece missed a massive payment to the International Monetary Fund, becoming the first developed nation ever to default. The country spiraled into a full-blown financial crisis. Banks closed, unemployment soared, and millions of families wondered how they would survive. Newspapers worldwide speculated about a Grexit, a forced exit from the Eurozone. Commentators began asking if Greece was being stripped for parts by creditors. That silly news ticker from The Simpsons started trending online again. People called it another prediction. But the gag wasn't magic. It was insight, a single absurd image capturing the reality of global economics in the age of austerity. By turning a sovereign nation into a commodity on an auction site, The Simpsons nailed a truth few politicians would admit, that debt can reduce a country to merchandise, its dignity up for sale. What makes this moment chilling is how perfectly it fits our age. The show didn't just foresee a debt crisis. It anticipated the way modern crises are experienced, as memes, tweets, and tickers scrolling across our screens. In 30 years of jokes, the writers had learned to compress global complexity into one brutal sentence. And in 2015, that sentence stopped being funny. It became the headline Greece was living. Back in September 1998, an episode titled The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace aired on The Simpsons. In it, Homer decides he wants to be an inventor like Thomas Edison. He scrawls a jumble of equations across a chalkboard, a quick sight gag showing how out of his depth he is. The formulas look random, like nonsense. It's meant to make us laugh at Homer's cluelessness. But more than a decade later, physicists began taking a closer look. One of Homer's scribbles turned out to approximate the mass of the Higgs boson, the elusive God particle theorized in the 1960s but not officially discovered until 2012. That discovery at CERN's Large Hadron Collider won the Nobel Prize in Physics the following year. Scientists had spent billions of dollars and decades of research chasing it. Homer had written a rough version of it on a blackboard in a cartoon 14 years earlier. Of course, the joke didn't conjure the Higgs boson into existence. The show's writers, especially David X. Cohen, had studied physics and liked to sprinkle authentic-looking math into episodes. Yet the accuracy was so striking that Time magazine quipped The Simpsons had discovered the Higgs before CERN did. This is more than trivia. It's a glimpse of how pop culture can embed the deepest frontiers of science into mass consciousness. A throwaway gag about Homer's incompetence put the universe's most mysterious particle on primetime television years before the public had ever heard of it. In a single frame, the show fused comedy with cosmic curiosity, and reminded us that the future of knowledge is already swirling in the margins of our culture. The yellow cartoon wasn't just joking, it was foreshadowing one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs of our era. In May 2012, The Simpsons closed its 23rd season with an episode called Lisa Goes Gaga. It was meant as an outrageous parody of one of the most outrageous artists alive. Lady Gaga arrives in Springfield dangling from cables, glittering in silver, sparks shooting from her bra, playing a guitar in midair as the crowd gasps below. It's so over the top that even Gaga's fans took it as affectionate exaggeration, a cartoon taking her theatricality to an impossible extreme. Fast forward 5 years. February 2017, the Super Bowl halftime show, the single most watched performance slot on the planet. Millions of viewers look up at the stadium roof. Lady Gaga leaps off, harnessed to cables, descending from the sky in a sparkling outfit, opening a medley of her hits. The entrance, the energy, even the way she hangs in the air. It's the Simpsons scene, only real. Social media explodes with side-by-side clips. Gaga herself admits the resemblance gives her chills. No one is claiming a cartoon caused the stunt. Other artists have used aerial rigs. But the level of detail, the harness, the glittering bodysuit, the flight over the crowd, makes it feel like déjà vu scripted in yellow. The Simpsons didn't just parody Gaga spectacle, it storyboarded one of the defining pop culture moments of the decade. That's the deeper pattern. The show wasn't simply predicting events. It was mapping the logic of a culture where parody and reality feed each other in a loop. A scene that started as a joke about excess became the blueprint for excess fulfilled. Lady Gaga's flight shows how the line between satire and reality can blur until the future feels like a rerun. What we laugh at today may be what we live tomorrow, under stadium lights. July 2007. The Simpsons movie bursts into theaters as a bright, anarchic spectacle. In one fleeting sequence, the family is hiding on a train. Marge comforts Lisa, saying, "It's not like the government is listening to everybody's conversations." Smash cut, a cavernous hall filled with rows of government agents eavesdropping on millions of calls in real time, including Marge's. It's played for laughs, a cartoon exaggeration of paranoia. Audiences chuckle and move on. 6 years later, the punchline explodes. In June 2013, former NSA contractor Edward Snowden leaks classified files showing that the US government has, in fact, been collecting vast amounts of phone and internet data from ordinary people around the world. The revelations rock the globe. Headlines speak of mass surveillance. Allies protest. Citizens learn that their private lives are not as private as they believed. And suddenly, that scene from the Simpsons movie doesn't look like satire. It looks like footage from inside the secret itself. This is what makes the moment uncanny. In 2007, most of the public had no idea how far surveillance had already gone. The Simpsons captured, with a 10-second gag, the architecture of a hidden program that wouldn't be exposed for another 6 years. It's not just that a cartoon predicted a scandal. It's that a cartoon voiced what few dared imagine, that mass data collection was already routine, and that the walls between government and private life were dissolving. Looking back, the scene reads like a warning disguised as a joke. In the age of smartphones, smart TVs, and always-on microphones, it still does. The movie asked us to laugh at an impossible dystopia. Snowden showed us it was our reality. January 2006. The Simpsons airs Homer's paternity coot. It's a light-hearted story about Homer discovering a possible long-lost father, a treasure hunter. To bond, they go diving for a Spanish galleon using tiny one-person submarines. Homer's craft wedges into coral. Oxygen runs low. Communications fail. He panics. At the last second he's saved, a funny, tense beat before the credits roll. Viewers laugh, relieved. 17 years later, June 2023. A real submersible called Titan descends toward the wreck of the Titanic with 5 people on board. It's a private tourist expedition at the frontiers of risk and wealth. Then it vanishes. Days of frantic search end with a grim announcement: the vessel has imploded, killing everyone inside. Social media dredges up the old Simpsons episode. Side-by-side images show Homer trapped in a mini-sub and the Titan's tiny pressure hull. The resemblance is unsettling. No one believes the cartoon predicted the tragedy. Yet the parallels expose something deeper: our appetite for pushing boundaries without fully understanding the stakes. In 2006, the gag highlighted the absurdity of a dad in an undersea tin can chasing treasure. In 2023, the world watched billionaires do almost the same thing in real life. The show's comedic tension, low oxygen, broken contact, rescue, became real-world tension without a rescue. That's why the scene feels prophetic. It wasn't about submarines. It was about hubris, the faith that technology will save us even in the most hostile environments. The Simpsons played that faith for laughs. Titan turned it into headlines. The episode now reads less like slapstick and more like a caution sign we all ignored. August 1998. Season 10 of The Simpsons opens with a ridiculous scheme. Homer, always chasing easy money, discovers that used fryer grease can be sold for cash. He drags Bart into a late-night caper, sneaking around Springfield siphoning oil from fast food dumpsters and school vents. It escalates into a turf war with groundskeeper Willie, himself a secret grease thief. The idea is so absurd it feels like a parody of Homer's desperation. Who would actually steal old cooking fat? A decade later, newspapers begin reporting a bizarre new crime wave. As biofuels and animal feed industries boom, yellow grease suddenly becomes valuable. Restaurants toss their used oil into outdoor tanks, thieves arrive at night with hoses and trucks. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, police departments from New York to California were filing cases against grease bandits. One man is caught siphoning 300 gallons from a Burger King. Losses to restaurants climb into the tens of millions. What once seemed like a joke subplot is now a real black market. The deeper truth here is about how quickly the economics of waste can flip. The Simpsons turned a throwaway gag into a blueprint for an emerging underworld. It showed, years ahead of time, that even the most disgusting byproducts of our culture can become commodities, and where there's profit, there's crime. Looking back, Homer's ludicrous get-rich scheme is more than slapstick. It's an early warning of a world where nothing is worthless, where our trash can spark theft rings, police raids, and lawsuits.